Yang udah.
Ya sebenarnya satu.
Ya.
Wahyu Nurpalo.
Ya, ya, Pak. Tanya. Apa linknya beda? Bentar. Iya, off cam aja internasional lu mau on cam nggak diangkat juga.
Sholat.
Emang kalau yang di mana tadi?
Ya.
Di sini. Ya udah. Slide ke kanan aja. Tapi metan tarakannya tadi. Pas Selasa kalau cepat
Jadi.
Assalamualaikum.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Boleh aja Ibu. Halo, Assalamualaikum, Prof. Aan and Prof. Ina.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you today?
Fine, thank you. How about you, Prof. Aan and Prof. Ina?
Not so bad. I'm just fine. Just fine. Very good. It's time to begin.
Yes, okay. Okay, we begin our international webinar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and the most merciful, all praises to Allah and His blessing for gathering us in this occasion. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this enlightening international webinar with the topic Understanding Literacy Online and Development of Mirror Image Website. This event is organized by the Educational Doctoral Study Program of Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa University. I'm Heri Nuraini, delighted to be your master of ceremony for this event, and I'm excited to guide you through a day of learning and discussion. The Honorable Rector of Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa University, Professor Dr. Insinyur Haji Fatah Sulaiman, STMT, the Honorable Director of Postgraduate Program, Professor Dr. Aan Aspianto, MH, the Honorable Vice Director of Postgraduate Program, Professor Dr. Kartina, AM, MP, Professor Helmi Yazid, SA, MSI, AK, CA, CPA, Professor Alfi Rano, ST, MT, PhD. The Honorable Coordinator of the Educational Doctoral Study Program, Professor Dr. Soleh Hidayat, MPD. The Honorable, the heads of the Educational Doctoral Study Program, Dr. Nurul Andriani, MPD. The Honorable, the webinar speaker, Dr. Ibrar Bat and Associate Professor Dr. Ina Suryani. The Honorable Moderator for the main session, Ms. Rosmania Rima, and the Honorable all of participants and committee of this webinar. Okay, before we get started, I would like to go over some important rules for today's webinar. First is, please ensure that you have a stable internet connection and are in a quiet environment to minimize background noise. And then all participants allowed to on the camera during the webinar. And then all participants allowed to mute the microphone during the webinar. Today, we are here to explore the worlds of literacy online and mirror image website. To ensure you make the most of today's webinar, let me walk you through the event structure. We have a package agenda, including insightful presentation, engaging discussion, and of course, an opportunity for you to ask questions. Here's rundown of today's schedule. The first is opening, and then singing national anthem Indonesia Raya. Next is speech from the heads of organizing committee. And the fourth is speech from directors of postgraduate program and which to open the webinar. And then the sixth is documentation. Next is the first presentation by Associate Professor Dr. Ina Suryani from Perlis University, Malaysia. And the next, second presentation will be delivered by Dr. Ibrar Bat from Queen's University, Belfast, UK. And then next is question and session. And then the last is conclusion. Okay, now we are coming to sing national anthem Indonesia Raya. For the outside participants allowed to stand up, and For we are listening to and singing national anthem Indonesia Raya.
Indonesia tanah airku, tanah tumpah darahku. Di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi bangku ibuku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita berseru, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Okay, and the next agenda, speech from the heads of organizing committee. For Mr. Mawardi Nurullah, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guest, the Director of Postgraduate Program, Professor Dr. Aan Aspianto MH, and the Coordinator of Doctoral Program in Educational Studies, Professor Dr. Soleh Hidayat MPD, esteemed speakers and participants. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our highly anticipated webinar. I'm profoundly honored to stand in front of you today as the head of the organizing committee, and I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to each and every one of you for joining us. Our webinar topics, Mastering the Art of Writing Research and Publication, is timely and pertinent because it addresses some of the most pressing issues and opportunities of our time. We have assembled an impressive roster of experts who will share their insights, experience, and knowledge of this vital topic. Our objective for today is not only to inform and educate, but also to inspire and cultivate meaningful connection between our participants from Indonesian universities and colleges. I urge everyone to actively engage, ask questions, and contribute to the discussion. The success of this webinar will depend not only on the expertise of our presenters, but also on the participation and energy of our audience. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our sponsor, without whom this event would not have been feasible. Their dedication and support for the advancement of knowledge are genuinely admirable. I would also like to recognize the effort and commitment of the organizing committee, whose crisis efforts have brought us to this juncture. They have labored diligently in the background to ensure that every aspect of this webinar runs smoothly. In conclusion, I would like to thank all of you for being present today. Your presence greatly enhances the value of this event. I urge you to make the most of this opportunity by connecting, learning, and inspiring others. So I wish you all a highly productive and engaging time at our webinar. and I look forward to sharing this memorable experience with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mawardi Nurullah. The next, the speech from directors of postgraduate program, and also to open the international webinar for Professor Dr. Aan Aspianto, SSI SHMH. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat siang, salam sehat, namo buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Peace be upon and Allah mercy and blessings. Distinguished guests, Dr. Ibrar Butt from Queen's University, Belfast, United Kingdom. Distinguished Associated Professor Dr. Ina Suryani from Universitas Malaysia, Perlis. Executives Board of Postgraduate Program of Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa University. Deputy Director 1 for Academic Affairs of Postgraduate, Professor Kartina. Deputy Director 2 for Finance, Dr. Helmi Ajid. Deputy Director 3 for Student Affairs and Cooperation, Professor Alfirano. The coordinators of doctoral program, Professor Dr. Soleh Hidayat, MPD, the Secretary of Doctoral Program, Associated Professor Dr. Nurul Handriani, Head of Study Program for Master Degree of Postgraduate Program, postgraduate lecturers, and the academic and administration staff of postgraduate program. Good afternoon and best wishes to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, in this occasion, I would like to convey a number of things related to the arrival of our guests. Dr. Ibrar Butt from Queen's University, Belfast, UK, and Associated Professor Dr. Ina Suryani from University Malaysia, who is willing to attend the postgraduate program of Untirta as speaker in this international webinar. I am as director of postgraduate program of Untirta are very pleased for this framework of our collaboration to organize academic program such webinar, especially for lecturers of postgraduate program and for the student of doctoral candidate in education. I am as director personally really welcome for this event. The theme of mirror image website is very important for education. The word of education cannot be such. The concept has the ability to understand and use information. Digital literacy can now be used as a learning medium that allows contributing to improving the quality of learning. The word of education cannot be separated. The concept has the ability to understand and use information. Digital literacy can now use as a furniture media. Digital literacy can include an understanding of the web and search engines. Digital literacy can also be defined as the set of attitudes, understanding, and communicating information and knowledge in various media and formats. Digital literacy is the ability to relate
Mengisi
to
formulir
hypertextual information in the sense of sequential reading with computer aid. In general, digital literacy is the ability to relate to information. Last but not least, I also hope that the implementation of this program can be used to enhance our competence in education about the digital literacy awareness. That's all that I can say. Thank you for your attention and cooperation, and have a nice webinar. Success for you all by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I declare this webinar open. Allahumma fiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you, Prof. Aan, for the speech and opening. And before we are coming to the main agenda, let's take the documentation. The all participants to on the camera, please. Okay, for the first page, 1, 2, 3. Okay, next page is 1, 2, 3. Next, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Next, 1, 2, 3. Next, 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we are coming to the main agenda, the presentation from our distinguished speaker today. And the session will be moderated by Ms. Rosmania Rima. And for Ms. Rosmania Rima, the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Heri, for the opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. Selamat siang, Prof. Ina. Yeah, we're glad you could join our international webinar. I'm happy to be in charge of today's event. My name is Rosmania Rima, and I'll be leading you through this session. Before we go any further, I would like to bring up a few important points. To keep background noise to a minimum, please make sure that your microphones are turned off during the webinar. Please type your question in the chat box if you have any, and we will answer them during the Q&A session. Yeah, now let's introduce our first speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Ina Suryani from University Malaysia Perlis. She is an experienced associate professor with a demonstrated account of teaching and research in English for special purpose, particularly in technical writing. She is specialized in genre analysis, text analysis, technical writing, and teaching methods. She completed her studies in Doctor of Philosophy or PhD with a focus on technical writing. Her basics are in BEd, teaching English as second language with a minor in linguistics and also in literature. Having graduated in MSc Computing, bridging from the Montfort University, she is fundamentally prepared for a more critical and unique conception of technical writing and ELT pedagogy. And her lectures are specialized in technical communication and literature review writing, particularly for engineering discipline. She is also experienced in in editing research articles and also proposals and developing content writing for engineering discipline. And today she is going to talk about development of mirror image website for about 30 to 45 minutes, Ibu. And without further ado, let's invite Associate Professor Dr. Ina Suryani. Screen is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you to our fluent MC, Harry Muraini, and our moderator, Miss Rosmania Rima. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera.
Waalaikumsalam. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sorry for interrupting, Prof. Ina. It seems that her voice is not clearly heard by us.
You mean, okay. Is it better now?
Um, still unclear.
How about now? Is it better? Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
my voice?
but it's like whispering.
Oh, it's not clear?
Not yet clear, ma'am.
Oh dear. I think I would have to use a microphone maybe. Or give me a moment, yeah. Testing. Is this better? Can you hear me?
Yes, it's better, ma'am.
It's much better, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Alhamdulillah, that's good.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. I start again, yeah? Okay.
Silakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yeah. Thank you to our fluent MC, Miss Harry Muriani, and also our moderator, Miss Rusmania Rima. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam
Waalaikumsalam
sejahtera.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I think we have Dr. An Aspianto just now, the Director of Postgraduate Program of UTIRTA, Professor Dr. Soleh Hidayah, Dr. Nurul Andriani, we have Mr. Mawardi Abdullah, and many more academics and administrators, yeah. Distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Ibrar Bad from Queen's University, Belfast, UK, the lecturers, the academics, administrators, doctorate candidates, and researchers of Universitas Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa. First and foremost, I wish to express my sincere thanks to Dr. An Aspianto, Professor Dr. Soleh Hidayah, and my associate, Dr. Udi Samanhudi, for inviting me to talk on the development of mirror image website. Is my voice okay?
Yes.
My volume is okay, yeah? Thank you. Okay. My sharing for today is based on a project that I directed for my university. The project is more than 10 years ago, so it has been a while, and the internet has evolved so much over the decade, yeah? Nonetheless, I hope that my sharing of experience could be a guiding light to you and those interested in venturing into mirror image website. So, is my slides being projected?
Yeah, second, please.
Um, okay, so I am Internasional from University Malaysia Perlis, also known as UNIMAT in short. Okay, UNIMAT in short. Okay, next slide. Okay, second slide. The development, the title. Yeah, this one. Yes. Okay. So globalization has brought many challenges to the governance, yeah, the economy, the industry, and many other areas, including the academia. So the new challenges require the academic to reach out to the global community, especially in the chase for global promotion, in getting more international students and establishing international collaboration. So for this reason, the websites in multiple languages is advantageous as it can reach more audience and generate more promotions for the university. There are many benefits of using website for promotional gain by education, higher education providers, yeah. For example, as fast and easy access to millions of potential customers or students, and then access to growing internet users in the world, convenience of updating the information, the ability to display various forms of information, and ease of accessibility across space and time. So these are great benefits of our times. Despite the rapid use of website as promotional means, there have been inadequate details and examinations on the method how website development works. How is it done within an organization? So while there are some frameworks for website development projects, there is no one formula that fits all. Why is that? Namely because different organizations have different needs, different financial capacity, different technical capability. They have different platforms, different approaches and combinations, calls for different ways of doing it. So while there are numerous frameworks available as guide, little is established on which approach would be most suitable because the best way depends on the needs of the individual organization. So taking lead from this, my session shares UNIMAT experience on the methodology and practices executed during the development of mirror image websites in 3 foreign languages by University Malaysia Perlis, or also known as UNIMAT in short. Okay, next page, agenda. Okay, the development of university website makes massive collaboration among teaching, administrative, and technical staff. The development process are more complex when the websites are multilingual and are aimed for multicultural readership. So the website owned by UNIMAT was originally in Malay language, which is the national language of Malaysia. And the English version comprises information meant for international audience. It is a step forward towards better international visibility. So these mirror websites were the mirror image websites in 3 foreign languages were developed using hierarchy chart and page layout techniques. The development was carried out by 2 technology staff, and the rest of the committees were administrative and teaching staff. I will describe the activities that were carried out within the website development project, followed by the challenges of the development, the outcome of the projects, and finally, the current issues in relation to this topic. Okay, next slide. Okay, the activities. Okay, the project activities around these three elements, yeah. It revolves around these three elements: the technical setup for the website project, the people in the project, and the methodology of the project. Okay, next slide, the technical setup. Okay, before this project, UNIMAP website for China and Arab region, we hosted it. This website was hosted, developed, and maintained by a third-party company in the respective countries. So this posed difficulties in updating the information, tracking of user access, and monitoring traffic data. So the university management decided to do an in-house development, which brings forth the project. The project begins with setting the three core components. So you have the uniform resource locator, the URL, a hosting provider, and the website itself. Okay. The website uniform resource locator, or URL, often also referred as the website's domain name or address. So this URL allows user to access the website through the www, World Wide Web. URLs, they are displayed in address bar of web browser with the URL or HTTP or HTTPS. So when the university decided in-house development, our technical team first ensured the availability of this chosen domain. They registered the domain and the hosting provider in the respective region, because we were doing it in China and Arab also, and also in Thailand. So after the technical team identifies the host name and path component, then only the other committee began the content development for each hosting. Okay, next page, the people. Okay, the people, the website development work is complex, as you can imagine, yeah. It needs involvement not only from technical know-how, but also relies on various expertise in the organization. So the project had 4 committees. In one committee, there are a few members. Okay, so 4 committees, which has many members. So the 4 committees are the steering committee, IT committee, content committee, and editorial committee. Now, our steering committee holds the roles to manage the funding and manage progress of the project milestones. The steering committee consists of the Vice Chancellor, the ICT and Bursary Senior Officer, the Head of International Affairs, which at that time was me. I was also the director of the project, reporting the progress of working committee to the steering committee. The IT committee dealt with technical issues. The content committee, they gather and verify the content. And the editorial committee work on the translation and language editing. So for this project, all committee studied the websites of other organizations, other universities, to look for design ideas in their respective areas. At the same time, the content committee began to pull the required information from various departments. Okay, next slide, the methodology. Okay, the methodology. When researchers suggested the most website development and management practices rely on knowledge, many researchers suggested, okay, they suggested that most website development and management practices, it relies on knowledge and experience of individual developers. It's not so much of the standard method, because there are always challenges to overcome, and there'll be new steps coming in. So there is one standard methodology. Okay, so it really relies on the knowledge and experience of the individual developers. So how is it the method for mirror website development in my university? So it goes like this, yeah. We follow, okay, next slide. Okay, The investigation on website development techniques done in UK, okay, by Taylor et al. He studied 25 organizations in the UK, and they investigated the way in which website development activities were carried out. So the nature of UK organization studies includes engineering companies, education, pharmaceutical, financial services, tourism, local government, manufacturing, shipping, and many more. They found that there was only limited use of formalized website design techniques. Roughly only half of the organizations studied did use some form of website layout standards. And they found 68% of the organizations studied have not used any techniques in their website development. Some of the techniques listed were website hierarchy charts, website flow charts, page layout, and storyboards. So method-wise, this project benefits a great deal from hierarchy chart and page layout techniques. The website for this project was represented in diagrammatic and hierarchy manner. Okay, next page on the development flowchart for the mirror image websites. Okay, this is the development flowchart. It starts with the direction from the steering committee. This our and then after getting the specification on direction and content by the steering committee, the work starts with the IT committee. Using the existing English website, the IT committee came up with hierarchy chart and page layout techniques for 3 foreign languages of Thai, Arabic, and Mandarin website. Now let's move to the next slide to see the process clearer. Okay, the nature of the organization is higher education. So among the department involved were student residency department for hostel fees and description, bursary for academic fees, faculties and registrar for courses offered, student affairs department for students' activities and regulations. So the information obtained in various forms, the information comes in various forms such as in brochures, memos, minutes of meetings, and emails. So there are cases where departments releases many versions of information, and some of the versions even contradict. So problems on different fees and entry requirement or application deadlines can be disastrous in many cases. So at this point, it was important for the content committee to get verification on the right content from each relevant department. So after obtaining information verification from the departments, the information was sent to the English language editor. It is important to understand that the information was constructed by various departments in Malay language, which is the national language for Malaysia. So the English language editor, who is the English second language user, she translated the information into English. The head of the working committee checked the translation work and upon approval, distribute the information to the Mandarin, Arabic, and Thai language editors. Now these editors, they were native speakers of the respective language, and they have English as their second or third language. The language editors translated and worded the information in a manner suitable for promotional purpose. At that time, the exact content of the translated version in Mandarin, Arabic, Thai, they were not checked because we did not have much time. The translated work of these languages were taken as per se. We just trust them, okay? But the steering committee took an extra step, okay? The steering committee elected a few senior academicians who were native speakers of respective languages to check on the language accuracy and cultural suitability. Okay, next page. Now the challenges, the challenges, there are many. As mentioned before, the major problem was in versions of information. In addition, information comes from many forms in like media statements, speeches, minutes of meeting, reports, videos, and many more. So at this point, the language editors also work it out with multimedia designers on the suitable multimedia supplement for each of the page. Most of the multimedia supplements included were pictures, tables, diagrams, and videos. After determining the designated content, length, and multimedia supplement, the IT committee, they draft up the diagram for the page layout. Consequently, it was the IT committee who determined the website structure and ensure that all versions of website developed are uniform and compatible. It must be uniform. It cannot be like different page, different standard. So the page layouts were prepared as templates for website in all languages versions except for website in Arabic. Because Arabic is special, okay? It needs special template because the nature of Arabic language that require reading from right to left, okay? So Mandarin version, on the other hand, was created to be read left to right. Okay? Mandarin traditionally should be top to bottom, right? But we create it left to right. So these layout designs were done iteratively by the IT committee, language editors, and steering committee. After reaching an agreement on the best template, it was time to upload the content onto the server. However, there were problems in getting all the committees to sit together at this stage. Up until then, the team only meet regularly after office hour, at 5 times only. And the rest of the communication were done through group email. So the reason was, even though the website development project was above, the reason was, even though the website development project was given to the committee members are actually tied down to their main work. Okay, their main work, for example, the language editors, they are actually language instructor who are busy with teaching. They're teaching like 18 hours per week, and they have to do teaching preparations and so on. The content committee, they also sits in the Center of International Affairs Office, and they were busy hosting foreign delegates, which always come to visit the university. And then the IT committee, they were busy with day-to-day maintenance of university server and ICT service. So the uploading process required coordinated progress from all team members. And for this reason, the team was taken away from the campus to a remote resort over a weekend. So the workshop was aimed at uploading the content onto the template. Okay, next page. Okay, at the first stage, the IT committee had already worked on the HTTP protocol virtualization, and the templates of the approved page layout were already parked on the designated servers, but the status of the website remained unpublished, so still unpublished mode. The IT committee, they come up with simple module that put in plain words. They write the guide on how to upload the contents onto the designated pages. After the template, the content multimedia supplements were ready, the uploading process was accomplished over the weekend. The uploading process was done by the language editors under close guidance by the IT committee. Significantly, the workshop facilities, the workshop facilities, they have full presence, yeah, and cooperation from all team members, including the Vice Chancellor. The Vice Chancellor was also sitting with us. So it makes the work faster, making confirmation and reference to double check the information quick and on spot. Okay, so it requires high commitment, yeah. So the presence also retain the group focus because the boss is there, so everybody was focused, and this enabled the team to make progress in a coordinated manner. So after the uploading process, the IT committee proceed with the backup storage. They quickly make a backup, and the network process for the website procedure on the server up to the internet and intranet. Okay. Next page. Okay. The outcome, yeah. So the foreign language website were constructed as a mirror image of the official English website. So out of 81 links on English website, about 50.62% of the links were fully translated into 3 foreign languages. 23% only have the first page translated, and 25.93% of the links, it was not created in the foreign language websites. The factors which influence translation were relevant to the target audience and promotional value, meaning we do translate some of the content. Those are not meant for international audience were not translated. We only translated the information with promotional value, like program enrollment requirement, fees, showcase of student activities, and highlights of academic events and programs. So each language website has photo gallery and display hundreds of pictures on the international students' activities. The photos were taken by a professional photographer hired by the university following UNIMED corporate image. That means the pictures were ethically and it follows the corporate standard. So this site is one of the favorite pages for the international students, friends, and families. Yeah, they send it to the friends and family. Okay, next page. So the performance of the website was also reported in a study by Didega and Irfan Manish in the following year. So they used the criteria obtained from Alexa Bank. Okay, among the criteria were traffic rank, average number of page views, percentage of visitors, the internal and international visitors, number of in-links, and spend time on site per user. So the finding shows a positive and favorable outcome for the website. UNIMED percentage was at 45.4% for visitors abroad, which is the highest among the universities in Malaysia at that time. So I was very happy. Following close were University Technology Malaysia at 43.7% and University Malaysia Pahang at 41.2%. They pointed out that this could be contributed by the appearance and the language features. So based on the outcomes of the finished product and also based on the external evaluation by Didegah and Irfan Manish, it can be concluded that the developments of mirror websites it is successful in gaining international visibility, which was one of the project aim. Okay, we're coming to an end on the current issues. Okay, it is important to bring your attention to the first point of my presentation, which is on why we did a mirror image website in 3 languages. Our purpose back then, it was because at that time, website is the best platform for fast and easy access to millions of potential customers. Another reason is because of the convenience in updating the information, the ability to display various forms of information, and the ease of accessibility across space and time. There are among main reason why we did the project. However, as the years pass, technology has grown exponentially. More platforms are available, especially through social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. The abundant choices of platforms can be harnessed to achieve the same purposes. So another consideration in choosing platform would be on the accessibility of different regions, where some countries do not have access to certain platforms and gateways. So this brings forth the needs for studies. Okay, it's an opportunity for postgraduate students. The needs for studies on trends of regional users of the target market. Studies on comparison of countries and age group which have their own preference and mainstream platform. Another consideration for further study is on monitoring the key performance indicator on the project developed, such as the user reach count, user traffic, user engagement, and many others. Nowadays, these KPIs are these key performance indicators are easy to be monitored, as the website and social media platforms, they have features and plugins ready, so it's easier and faster data collection. So researchers can make use of this ready data to report on. Okay, next page, current issue. We're coming to the last page already. There are many social media platforms that can achieve the benefits of easy access by millions across space and time. So like Facebook, it communicates better with parents of students, while Instagram delivers better performance when the content is related to visual markets such as students' swarm drone flying projects or camping activities. LinkedIn and ResearchGate Professionals platform focuses on academic networking. For that reason, it is perfect for academia network, corporate training, and even finding experienced academics for thesis examination, postgraduate opportunities, research grants collaboration, and co-authoring research works. Yeah, so I think I got a few friends, co-authors from ResearchGate. I've never met them in my life, but they have published a few research articles, journal articles. So these platforms are also frequented by academics and researchers who are interested in additional pathways to advance their careers. TikTok is currently among the most popular social media platform for youth as the video focused platform. The content need to be short, witty, and engaging to be attractive. So this ideal exposure for audience of 18 to 24 years old, the platform can bring the university and programs exposure a massive scale, yeah, if it's done correctly. So in short, yeah, social media platforms, they are powerful tools to reach prospective audience and generate inquiries. In hands of right digital developer experts, these channels can be used by the universities to fulfill the university needs. So the expertise need to include the expertise needed for this development includes content management, designing engaging content, managing and optimizing content, while continually delivering the result that the university is looking for. So you must keep on monitoring the KPI as you develop the content and create your directions. So that is all from me. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. Ina. Yeah, so such an insightful presentation about it is a kind of research-based, website development of mirror image. And I think the participant will need to hold your questions till the end of the second speaker presentation. So our second speaker is already here, Dr. Ibrar. Yeah, it seems that Dr. Ibers is getting prepared. Yeah, but Prof. Ina, unfortunately, most of the online participants couldn't hear your voice clearly throughout your explanation. Probably something happens with the audio, but we who are in the auditorium can hear you clearly. All right, so. We are still waiting for Dr. Ibrar. Probably the participants, you can drop your questions on the chat box, yeah. Or you may also do a live question session after this. Get prepared. Yeah, Prof. Ina, actually, I'm wondering. Oh, yeah. Hi, Dr. Ibrar.
Hi, assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just went out for a moment to get a glass of water. So you must have finished. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's fine. Great. All right, so let's now move to the second fantastic speaker. Dr. Ibrar Brat is already here. He is a senior lecturer in the School of Social Sciences, Education and Social Work, Queen's University, Belfast, UK. Much of his research is at the intersections of applied linguistics and higher education. He currently has active research interest in writing and literacy as social practice, and contemporary digital literacy and epistemology. Between 2021-2023, he was a recipient of Leverhulme Research Fellowship for a study called Literacy and Harmony, a study of Sino-Muslim heritage literacy in China. And his most recent book, titled A Semiotic of Muslimness in China, is forthcoming with Cambridge University Press and draws from extensive fieldwork from Sino-Muslim communities across China.
Oi, emang sih ada yang status now.
His prior work includes The Epistemology of Deceit, 2021 by Springer, 2019 co-authored monograph entitled Academics Writing, The Dynamics of Knowledge Creation, and 2017 monograph Assignment as Controversies, published by Routledge, as well as various published research articles in these areas of interest. He also supervises doctoral projects on issues related to literacy and writing, digital literacy, language education, and digital epistemologies. Dr. Ibra will deliver his presentation on understanding literacy online. And if audience have any questions during the session, please just type them in the chat box and we will address them during the Q&A session. And Dr. Ibra, you will have about 30 to 45 minutes to deliver the presentation. Yeah, so without further ado, let's invite Dr. Ibra.
Thank you very much, Professor Rosmania, for your introduction. Could I clarify that I have, did you say 30 or 40 minutes? Or what's the time frame for this? I thought it was an hour, but it's no problem. I can do it in 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, right. So, and how much time do we have for questions after that? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
And how much time do we have for questions after the 30 to 40 minutes?
Yeah, so after your 30 to 55 minutes presentation, we'll allocate about 30 minutes for a discussion session, both for Prof. Ina and also for you, Dr. Ibrar.
Oh, very good. But thank you very much. So, hi everybody, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's very good to be with you online. I visited Interta 2 or 3 times in person and 2 or 3 times online as well. So hopefully the next time I will come to visit you in person. A lot of my work centers around language, literacy and writing, sometimes in digital environments, sometimes on and off straddling digital and non-digital environments, and so I'm going to draw from a lot of these things that I've done and from other people's prior research in this presentation with you today. So thank you for organizing it and thank you for inviting me. You can follow me on Twitter, by the way, and my project Twitter is there as well on my personal website. I'll just go through this slide. So in this talk, we will discuss some of the fundamental ideas around literacy as a social practice, and that concerns how literacy occurs in and through the practices of people, their networks, and their contexts. I will try to present an agenda around how to examine literacies in education and in social life. And this is ultimately about literacy in context rather than literacy as an abstract skill. So literacy is, in this perspective, is about something that you do rather than something that you have. And I'll try to explain that as I go. I will use examples from some recent research that I've done on heritage literacy in China, as Professor Rosmania mentioned. I've put a link to my book, which is coming out in the next few weeks, there in the chat, so you can have a look at that. And ultimately, it's about understanding literacy as post-digital. which means more than digital. And so I will try to explain a bit of that as well. So some opening questions for reflection. If I were to do this as a class, I would get everybody to talk about this, but it's difficult to do that when you are not physically, in the room with you, talking to you about this. But often I think that it's important to start discussing a social practice approach to literacy, and what that means. It's important to start discussing it from one's own perspective. And I think that drawing from your own engagement with technology is the best place to start. If I gave you all, not that I have the money, but if I did, gave you all the same technology, and you went away and then you came back after a month, you would probably all exhibit different kinds of digital literacy practices with the same technology, because you all have different backgrounds, different languages, different interests, different hobbies, different things that you do. And so it's not really the technology that determines the digital literacy practices, it is rather the individual lives of people. And so understanding individual people's social practices are the best place to start when trying to come to terms with what digital literacy is, or what literacy online is in the lives of people. We have to think about our own literacy engagement to try and understand that. In fact, these questions, which you can try to reflect on personally, they come from an interview technique that I've used in the research in several projects, sort of a biographic narrative interview, where we talk to people about their story with technology in their lives, and we try to understand technology as they use it historically in their life. So these questions are actually taken from a certain kind of interview that you could do as a kind of research project. Building on that, I'd like to share with you a very brief anecdote. Very early on in my career, when I was a teacher of literacy and English as a second language in deprived parts of West Yorkshire, in inner city areas of Leeds and Bradford, I mainly taught people who were officially designated as illiterate. They were people who could not read and write in their own language, let alone in English. And some of them actually were even native speakers of English. And there was a kind of a literacy crisis at that time, or so the government talked about it in that way. So it was a great challenge for me, and it was a challenge that put me on the academic journey that I'm now on. So as I say, many of these people were illiterate, classified as illiterate in the educational sense of the word. But during the break times between the classes, and before the class and after the class, they would benefit from the college policy, which allowed them to bring their own technology into the classroom, into the college space, and sometimes, use the college computers. And this picture is taken from my book, which I conducted in colleges in the north of England. And I noticed that people would do lots of things in the break time. They would use the computers, they would buy and sell things on eBay, they would help each other with their applications for various things. They would often be people who were knowledgeable in a particular domain of activity. It could be religious knowledge, it could be personal cultural knowledge, and they would give advice to people. And I realized that these people aren't really illiterate, or rather the educational judgment of literacy and illiteracy is one particular judgment, but people have different types of literacies that they use in their daily life when they want to make meaning, when they want to get by, when they want to get things done in life. So observing that as a teacher at that time in the early part of my career propelled me to try to better understand literacy in people's lives. And so that set me on the academic journey that I'm now on to better understand literacy in everyday existence. So I'm going to try to come back to this anecdote as I link it to a social practice approach in the slides. So when it comes to digital technologies, well, digital technologies have given rise to a host of different ways of ways of communicating, ways of managing social relationships. ways of making friends, even meeting a loved one. And so these are all challenging our relationship, our concepts of learning and literacy. Even politics and citizenship is now heavily digitalized. And so these practices are also challenging the ways researchers of language and literacy conduct research, like, for example, discourse analysis. The affordances of digital media provide for different kinds of text, for example, which calls into question our methods of discourse analysis, which calls into question our methods of social network analysis, and various other things as well. And a social practice approach is about what people do with literacy in their online activities, even if they are illiterate. It's not about making the prejudgment that they don't have anything. It's about asking what they currently do. And it's about the meanings that they ascribe to the practices of their digital literacy and the ways that they use reading and writing in the broadest sense to achieve their purposes in life. So a social practice perspective takes practices as a starting point. And it's difficult from this perspective to speak of the practice of social networking or the practice of video gaming or the practice of political activism online. But these practices, such as tagging and various other things, can have different meanings in different situations. And practices are often hard to pin down. They are it's a kind of a cultural tool, a cultural practice. So a basic definition of practice is that we use is observable, collectible, or documentable activities in which texts have a role. And in literacy as a social practice, we also focus on events. Events involve real people, relationships, purposes, actions, places, times, like a job interview, like this particular activity with you now is a literacy event. We can examine the different practices that constitute the event, the writing of the article, the writing of my slides, the writing of my notes, and various other things. And these will be online and offline. And so any study of digital literacy will take in events and practices. And so we will look at this as well very quickly as I go over things. So literacy practices involve the literacy activity, the related text, ideologies and patterns of behavior surrounding those texts, attitudes and values that inform the text, and ultimately the broader ethnographic detail. Focus on the word ethnographic there. In the exploration of literacy practices, there necessitates a need to ask who is doing what, to whom, why, for whom, where, when, and moreover, who benefits. What becomes central in the capture and analysis of literacy events is the configuration of all of that, the action, talk, and text. So the practices are the literacy activity. Also, the ideologies can be part of the practice. And the event is the cultural construction and the configuration of all of those practices. It's important to go over through some history now as I start to explain this perspective of literacy online and studying, understanding and researching literacy online. So I think I'll just go over some brief history. For historical reasons, sociolinguistics has not been very interested in or accommodating to writing. 20th century Western linguistics has tended to favor the study of speech as natural language and not writing as a form of linguistic practice on its own terms. Humans are, after all, born to speak, but we're not all born to write. The bias in linguistics towards the study of spoken language owes its origins to ideas from the Ferdinand de Saussure and Bloomfield and others, what de Saussure called the tyranny of writing. Linguistics was focused on the study of patterns of sound change. Writing, especially orthography, was seen as having an excessive influence on spoken language and on speakers' perceptions of it because of its visual nature and because of the fact that it's quite fixed. De Saussure called this influence the tyranny of writing. He also argued that the linguistic object is not both the current written and spoken form. It's actually the spoken form alone is the object of linguistic research. And Bloomfield echoed the same sentiments or similar sentiments. So this early structural thinking is still visible in a lot of contemporary research on language, which tends, and even in sociolinguistics, which tends to favor spoken language. However, we know that some communities write more than they speak, and writing has evolved from a specialized skill to a mass mode of communication. I mean, think of religious communities which transmit knowledge through particular forms of literacy and writing. And also people in digital contexts, people spend most of their time communicating. Some people will spend most of the day texting or engaged in emailing or engaged in some kind of written interaction over speaking. So for this reason, Florian Kuhlmann, in his book Writing and Society, proposes a different view of the tyranny of writing, as writing is seen as something which actually dominates more than speaking now. And so there is a sort of an importance in terms of researching literacy and writing. It's part of a social view of language, because writing and practices of literacy have become crucial components of our linguistic ecology. I mean, just look at the writing behind me. I mean, if you read it down, it's Chinese. And if you read it if you tilt your head to the side, it's Arabic. So it says Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in one way, and it says Chinese characters in the other way. And so writing is a heritage skill. You can do art with writing. You can send messages with writing. And so it's a very complex activity that deserves to be looked at as a social practice on its own, as a, a multifaceted object of linguistic study. Our contexts are characterized by unprecedented social and technological change. So for this reason, David Barton, in his paper Directions for Literacy Research, which was over 20 years ago now, argues that whether it's the technological change or internet use or educational change and the nature of learning, the relation to language and poverty or social exclusion, etc., or the workplace, an analysis which starts from literacy is essential to understanding. Studies of restricted spoken language cannot adequately account for these crucial areas of contemporary social life. And that's why I focus on literacy studies. That's why I focus on language and digitalization. And so for me, it's social phenomena that connects with so many other things. And that brings me to the topic of literacy. So what does that look like? Excuse me. What does researching literacy online look like? Well, as I said in the previous slide, a social practice perspective of literacy begins with the premise, with the fundamental idea that we are always encountering literacy wherever we go. Even if we're not reading books, even if we're not writing, even if we say that we are not very literate, or even if we say somebody is not literate at all. That's not even a factor in a social practice perspective. What matters is what they do with meaning making in their life. Think of somebody you may know who is quote unquote illiterate, and then think about all the ways they make meaning every day, or even do forms of numeracy and mathematics. This is true for most people in the world. So here I have a written account from a recent project which looked at literacy in the lives of students. And it's from Jing, it's not her real name. And this is just 15 minutes of her life in the morning. So Jing gets up in the morning and she immediately, oops, somebody's scribbling on my slide there. Gets it, and she immediately checks her phone and checks the app which monitors her sleep patterns. She notices some iMessage and Weixin, which is a WeChat, messages have arrived overnight from her friends and family in different countries. So she quickly responds to some of these by typing on her cell phone. For others, she uses voice replies on Weixin because she cannot be bothered to type. Then she quickly likes some of her friends' posts, which cheer her up. She gets out of bed and then checks the mail as she's expecting a letter from her solicitor, walking past the Chinese calligraphy in the hallway, like I have that in my room. And then she reads the solicitor's letter. She makes a Turkish copy. She needs to sign it and return it by hand or by post. She makes a Turkish coffee, and the packaging is in Turkish, so she has to read the diagrams and the instructional diagrams. She checks important emails, doesn't read them fully, only the important ones, signs and returns a letter, then books a session at the gym with her app, and that's her 15 minutes of her morning, right? So in only 15 minutes of her morning, we see that literacy is tied to the particular details of her situation. The sleep app connects to her health-related concerns and her well-being, and how her health is intrinsically connected to her digital activities. The immediacy of instant and of global communications like WeChat or Weixin and iMessage allow her to receive messages overnight, but also to send them back. Some of them she doesn't type. Some of them she will leave an audio message, like many of you do. And sometimes she will receive an audio message, and sometimes she will have the audio message transcribed via the app, and sometimes it will be translated if somebody is speaking in a different language. So sometimes the app does some of the work for you. Sometimes it's the transcriber, sometimes it's the translator. She will engage, so these are multimodal. They are also connected to AI, which is doing some of the work for her. She has health-related literacies. She has literacies which are emotional because she cheers up herself by reading her friends' post, liking her friends' post to cheer them up. Emotional labor. And so all of the solicitor's letter is more formal and shows us how some literacies are still connected to paper-based activities because she has to sign it by hand. The Turkish coffee has a label which she reads. So she reads the images which explain how to make it. Okay. And calligraphy shows that she has emotional and cultural value with some forms of literacy which don't have a sort of a hermeneutic connection in that she reads them. It has an emblematic connection in that it's just there on the wall to remind her of, Chinese background and heritage. So some literacies serve an emblematic purpose rather than something that you read. But in 15 minutes, we capture all of this. Just 15 minutes of her life, we capture all of this rich tapestry and ecology of literacy in the life of the individual. Literacy is connected to all of these multiple forms of activity: heritage, health, emotional work, friendship connection, law, and paper-based modes of communication, and multilingual, and also AI and and multimodality. So literacy is embedded in everyday life. It's not something that you just do in school or work. It is embedded in everyday life. And that's why a social practice perspective is about capturing that embeddedness. Okay. So for the school child and for the university student, much of the literacy in the home, much of the literacy in the university, in the school, in the classroom is very different to the literacy in the community, in the mosque, in the family. Okay. Like the students in the early part of my career who were illiterate but would do many things with computers in their community and in their friendship group. Some people will have religious or spiritual literacies that they will engage with in everyday life. And it's something on the wall or something in a book. But there are very complicated and sophisticated practices around these things. So this becomes part of the research interest for a literacy researcher. The literacy practices which relate to emotional work and family ties and friendship ties, health issues, heritage, religion, culture, work and formal activities, making coffee and food, etc. This is all part of the ecological view of literacy. Okay, I'm not trying to redefine literacy. I'm just saying that it is attached to social practice. It is part of everyday goal-directed activity. It is multiple, as in literacy is. It is tied up with particular situations or, quote, literacy events. It is part of personal or community history. It is multimodal. It is also post-digital, and I will explain that shortly. And it's also something that people do rather than, or in addition to, something that people have. That's the key point that I want to say. Literacy, part of the problem with literacy is that it's a fairly recent word in English. And I know, you use the word literacy in Indonesian also, but I don't know if there is another word that you have. It's a very problematic word because in many cases it just means competency. Right, so people now use the word emotional literacy or religious literacy or health literacy, and they just use the word as a synonym for competency, political literacy, right? And it gets quite confusing in this respect. Really, I'm using it in a completely different way. I'm saying literacies are social practices of meaning making in any mode, in any form of semiosis. I use the word ecology here, and that's an interesting word I want to just touch on. It's like, it's worth briefly defining and clarifying. So, Gregory Bateson was one of the first people to use the word ecology outside of, the culture, the sort of natural world. By ecology, of course, we're talking about the natural world, but I'm using the word ecology here metaphorically when I talk about literacy ecology. Bateson linked biological notions of ecology to anthropological and psychological concerns about the nature of human thought. So he referred to his collected works as an ecology of mind. Since then, others have used the idea of ecology to situate psychological activity, including memory, into Nies's work on the ecology of memory, for example. Others have talked about the ecology of writing. I have written a paper recently, which it's under review, on the ecologies of knowledge production, where I talk about the writing practices of academics and how that forms an ecology of knowledge production. People have talked about the ecology of higher education. So the phrase the ecology of literacy can be used to sort of describe how literacy is tied to all aspects of social life, and it brings all of those aspects together. It brings all of those aspects together. So how we look at acts of reading and writing, from understanding the nature of reading and writing as purely psychological to one that is social and psychological. Instead of isolating literacy activities from everything else, an ecological approach aims to understand how literacy is embedded in other human activity, as I said earlier, in social life, in friendship ties, in emotional life, in love life, in religious life, etc., and in history and in thought and in culture. So that is what I mean by ecology, echoing David Barton's use of the word in his book, The Ecology of Literacy. Okay, so that's what I mean there. So when we look at it like this, then the theory of literacy is based on a comprehensive view of language that treats the textual aspects of language as embedded within and inseparable from other aspects like cultural and social parts of language. We can use the word metaphor of layers here to capture this embeddedness, like the skins of an onion. You peel away the layer, you have a different layer. You move on to the next one till you get to text, which is at the center of it. That's at the very center of a multi-layered view of language. And at its narrowest sense, that is what some linguists look at, like computer-assisted language learning or language study looks at text and the linguistic substance, the nuts and bolts of language. A broader view of language would look at cognitive processes, what's happening with people, like in psycholinguistics, languaging, you can call it that. A slightly more comprehensive view of language would look at events, cultural observable characteristics, interviews, seminars, etc. These are events. And then a broader view than that would look at the sociocultural and political context of communication. So, what's happening? What is the social political influence in that event? You know, are there things that can be said that can't be said? Who decides, etc. So there's sort of more critical discourse stuff comes into the broader aspects of that kind of analysis. So let's go over what I've said. Literacies are exclusively it's not enough to say that literacy is exclusively a set of skills applied the same everywhere and anywhere. Literacy is the literacy of a plumber is different to my literacies in this situation. So a literacy as social practice approach begins with a critique of this idea, and we say that literacies are depends on the institutions in which they occur, the particular context, the professions, the communities, cultural history, mediated by objects. And so that's what the kind of research we need to do. A very important piece of work is Brian Street's. If you know, if you don't, I would recommend engaging with it. Street, I will give you a very quick overview. His ethnographic research was in Iran, and he looked at the literacies of what you would call maktab literacy. So literacies in the small religious schools called a maktab. And then you have the pesantren method in Indonesia. These are small maktabs, and he came to the conclusion that basically there are these were not the literacies that were taught and valorized and considered important in the educational settings. They were literacies that were marginalized into the informal realms of society, yet they were incredibly complex and sophisticated in how they were performed, handled, and passed on. They were not proper literacies. And so he theorizes about the autonomous model of literacy as a technical skill. Ideological literacy is embedded in social epistemological principles. That's worth engaging with. Another one, actually coincidentally with the Muslim community, again, Scribner and Cole's study was of the Vai in Liberia, and they had multiple literacies, like some of the Indonesian communities will have. They had they had the formal literacy of school, which in this case was French based. Then they had the religious literacies, which were Arabic based, but then they had the indigenous language literacies. And there was different practices associated with different literacies. And some people were schooled, trained, or acquainted with one, two, or all three of these kinds of literacies. Okay. And so there were important conclusions that they made in that research. That formal schooling is only one form of literacy that individuals can be socialized into. David Barton and Mary Hamilton's work is also very good to engage with. They looked at local literacies in the local communities, they also sort of described the literacy practices in that community, how literacy is used as a method of sense making, and how literacy is connected to quality of life. They conclude that there are several things you need to bear in mind when conceptualizing literacy in these terms. That literacy is best understood as social practices, inferred from events but mediated by text, and various other points that we've already covered so far. I'm happy to share these slides with you. So there's a body of work on this perspective, and one of the things I've argued is that this approach to literacy is analysis. Talks about practices which are enacted. What counts as literacy in a social practice approach depends on the institutions in which it is embedded, the processes through which it is acquired, and the practices through which it is enacted. And it's germane to this focus is what people do with text and how they use to get things done. That's why it's kept always ethnographic. So literacy practices are any form of writing is always connected to social practices. Even something like graffiti, even something like, I just took a picture of this person in my own city a few years ago. So even something like that is connected to ideology, to some form of practice. So if you take something like graffiti, the graffiti that emerged in the United States, to really understand the graffiti that emerged in the United States in Brooklyn, you'd have to understand the culture of hip hop, the culture of breakdance or b-boys, the culture of the form of expression of the youth at that time in the most neglected parts of New York. And you'd have to look at the whole package of activity to understand the act of writing or literacy, graffiti. So that's just one example. A constellation of social practices. Typically, researchers start with a particular recorded activity, like a literacy event, and then try to extrapolate and understand and theorize the wider discursive practices that cause that event to take its particular shape and to give it form. And that's an important analytic perspective to have in mind when looking at any literacy event. So let's go practical now. Let's talk about how to do this in practice. So moving on to digital environments, we can see a number of things occur with respect to how people use language and literacy online. Language and technology is always controversial. Just look at the following headlines, which I took from various news sites of the last few years. In each of these headlines, there is a debate, there is an ongoing argument, there is a controversy, supposedly, around technology and society. And examining these becomes an interesting focus of research for somebody who wants to look at language online. So these are potential research ideas. Oops. Literacy studies offers much to better understand these problems and to try to research what they really mean. You can there is a conceptual and methodological overlap here between literacy studies and linguistic ethnography, or indeed discourse analysis, to examine the dynamic and dialogic relationship between text and context. We can look at we can look at communities and take a snapshot of how people engage in literacy activity. We can take a historical perspective. We can look at translingual and transmodal elements of language practices, how people mix languages, and we can look at the material dimensions to literacy, how people use tools and technologies. So what kind of methods can we use? Well, we can look at people's habits of use with digital technology. For the data I showed you earlier, when I showed you Jing's account, I use self-tracking app and sort of a diary interview or day in the life interview, where I took an app which monitored her practices that she did, and I also did an interview to discuss all the things that she'd done in the day with literacy. You can do a discourse analysis or document analysis of frameworks, digital literacy policies from your institution, from your Ministry of Education, from your government, etc. You can look at historical trends with digital media. You can do narrative interviews. The questions I asked you at the beginning, they were from a narrative interview. So you can dig deep into the past of the individuals. You can look at how people obtain information and how they discern information, how they make sense of it. how they Google and how they decide what is true and what is not, how they make that judgment. That is another form of research approach you can adopt. You can different kinds of interviews will help you do that. You can look at participatory methods where you make things with the participants. Maybe so I've used Venn diagrams where I get the participants to talk through their different practices at home, in the college, and at work, and they might make a Venn diagram to describe that. You can do screen recordings. I have used screen recordings in my own work where students were writing their assignments and I record the entire assignment from beginning to end so I can see all the things that went into that assignment. And you could look at the applications, the devices, and the platforms that people use. So maybe you could do a survey as well as the interviews. Some studies they will start with a kind of survey, wide-scale survey, looking at all the things that people use and building up from there. With each of these, we can see that there is some kind of focus on events and practices. With each of these, we can see that there's a need to better understand the research problem. There's a need to critically question who benefits and what is the view of language being adopted. And there's also a need to examine pedagogy and what has the opportunity for teaching and learning. We can look at how digital media are changing how we use language and express ourselves, how digital media are changing how we relate to people and network, how digital media are changing how we manage information and how we consider something a fact or not a fact or false information, and how digital media are changing the way we manage our social identities. In terms of how people use language, I'll turn to that very quickly. I'm sure you all know that, I don't know if you can see these, but I'm sure you all know that people use language in very free and dynamic ways online. I keep a collection of these, by the way. I have like hundreds of them, maybe even 1,000 now. Over the years, I've collected people's chats where they deploy translingual practices, because people, when you leave them alone, they don't respect the boundary of language. Historically, this is a fact. And there are certain things that cause us to separate language out. Usually it's ideology of national language ideology. Usually it can be family, it can be the context, etc. So there are just different ways. And when people are communicating with their friends, they will use a sort of a repertoire-based form of communication. And this is the most natural form of languaging. And language learners' participation in digital spaces both mediates and transforms language learning. It is a social cultural process which sees reading, writing, and communicating as situated, goal-directed, repertoire-based, and intimately tied to context. So you can see some of these examples here. Some of them you may understand them, some of them you may not. So I know the background of these people on the left. They are Tamil, ethnically Tamil, Hong Kong Muslims. And so they are saying they're breaking the fast on the plane. Golden arches is the Chinese word for McDonald's because of the golden arches, for the M. And so they translate that into Chinese and then translate it into English. And there's obviously talk about dessert there. And various other examples. I have so many of these, by the way. So this is where translanguaging comes in important as a kind of literacy practice. And it's about multilingual speakers and how they shuttle between languages, treating the diverse languages that form part of their own repertoire as an integrated system. It's important to understand those words, repertoire as an integrated system. That is the main, and the learner's linguistic repertoire. That's like an artist will have their palette of colors, right? And they will mix up their colors to make a painting. So language is a bit like that. You have your repertoire and you mix it up to make meaning. And that's the the most important thing there to understand in terms of translanguaging or translingual practices. And newer generations of language learners are communicating using language in this way. Active participation in social networks allows us to see this in ways that are very, very removed from language learning classrooms. And much of this practice is far removed from the classroom and an essential point of language learning. There are people who engage in, fan subbing, where they will make the subtitles for their favorite K-pop artist or their favorite K-drama or their favorite any drama. And they will make the subtitles, they will write them. And sometimes there's an immense high level of language learning and language practice taking place through these kinds of digital sites, through these kinds of digital practices. I mean, I watched an entire Turkish TV series a few years ago, and all the subtitles were done on fan sub sites. They were not done by official subtitlers. And so there are whole communities of people translating subtitles for songs, for TV series and films. And there's a lot of language learning that's going on here, which is outside of the language school, the language classroom, and outside of the textbook. Now, the textbooks, if you are curriculum people, you know that textbooks are ordered based on the ordered acquisition of language, this tense, then this tense, and more vocabulary, etc. But when you are engaging in digital practice, there is no ordered acquisition of language. It is just your social goals of getting things done in life. And language learning occurs through those social goals. It is situated, individuated, and dynamic, and related to getting things done in life. And I think that's an important thing to bear in mind. Digital practices are based on doing things with language and technology, meaning different forms of representation. For example, hyperlinks, relating, different ways of connecting and bonding with people and having relationships, thinking, different forms of cognitive activity, and thinking about reality, and ultimately different forms of being emerge. And this is where the idea of post-digital comes in. But I want to quickly whiz through discourse analysis before I go on to that. How long do I have, by the way? How much time do I have?
Just go ahead if you still need time to
Okay.
deliver some more material.
So when it comes to digital discourse analysis, which is one part of this literacy, understanding literacy online, I will go through very quickly some examples of what you could do. Now, of course, you will probably already know that discourse analysts, they look at connections between text, interactions, and society. This is quite common, and you will probably do a course on discourse analysis, and you know this already. But there are different types of connections: cohesion, coherence, intertextuality between different texts, and context. How do we do this online? I'll skip this slide. I'll skip that, and I'll go straight to that. Okay, so let's go back. So if you got an article, for example, excuse me. If you got an article, you know that articles are positioned in certain ways. There's a certain structure and a coherence to it. So if you've got the title of a newspaper article at the top, there's usually the date when it came out, or the time even. There's usually the person who wrote it, a picture. If you're looking at a website, that sometimes there'll be a video, and then usually the first few sentences tell you most of the things that you need to know. And this is a structure of a newspaper article. There is a kind of coherence there, and so you can look at it in that way. Oh, sorry. And there's also quotation. like, how people are quoted, opinion is given, and that necessitates a quote from someone. And here, so Gary Lineker, he said something which was considered controversial, and then so how people characterize the quotation by bringing text from somewhere else into there, you can characterize and make it look the way you want it to look. Negative, positive, make him look stupid, make him look intelligent, make him look evil, make him look good. So you bring text from somewhere else, that's intertextuality. That's what I want to look at more than the other aspects. But ultimately, when you bring something from somewhere else, you are able to manipulate it or characterize it a certain way. And of course, in digital context, there are different forms of intertextuality, because as we bring text into new places, we can recharacterize it for a new purpose. So intertextuality is a conversation between two or more texts. And you see this a lot in digital environments. That intertextuality, idea was articulated by Mikhail Bakhtin, a Soviet literary critic, who said that all texts are intertextual, and the way we combine different voices whenever we speak and writing is an important part of linguistic analysis. Look at the McDonald's sign referencing the slogan, "I'm loving it." "I'm loving it" is their slogan. Well, then during the pandemic, when they were getting everybody to put masks on, they made the M, the golden arches of the M, into the strap of the mask and said, "I'm covering it." So you can see multiple forms of visual and linguistic intertextuality there. You also have the "keep calm and carry on" slogan that was used during the Second World War in the UK during the bombings. As you know, there are bombings in Gaza now, where unfortunately it is the Western governments doing it, to innocent people, rather than the other way around. On those in that particular instance, they were the innocent ones being bombed, and now they are the ones inflicting the same kind of ideology, fascist and ideology and mass murder on other people. But that is going to be a topic for another discussion. So here you have the "keep calm and carry on" slogan that has been recontextualized into the pandemic. Keep calm and your distance, and then the mask, and keep calm and wear your mask. And so there are multiple forms of referencing the historical context of the original slogan, which is about the Second World War, to promote calmness and resilience in the face of the German bombings, modifying it and bringing it at an historical moment and bringing it forward to the current day for the pandemic, to say, "Keep calm and cover your face, keep calm and carry on," etc. So there are various ways you can look at that. Oops, sorry. So here you have another slogan from the United States, sort of the "Uncle Sam wants you for the US Army." So the one on the right is the original one. Okay. "Uncle Sam wants you to join the army. I want you." That's what he says. Right. And so people take that slogan now and use it for other things. So I saw this one in a shop in China where somebody said, "Don't look around, just you." And so people take the slogan like that. And then again, it was done during the pandemic. Your country needs you to wear a face mask. And so there's an intertextuality there where people lift something from somewhere else and recontextualize it into another place. In analyzing digital literacy activities, you can do various things like this, and complex contents, intertextuality, and recontextualization of that. So there is a kind of a lot you can do with memes here. So that you can see that there's a kind of a coherence to these particular memes. So you've got like the title at the top, "Scary Conference Full of Experts, : Now, academic titles, they often have a colon, right? And so it's reflecting that. And then there's something below it, advisor letting go of the student and saying, jump and not caring, over the edge. And the original cartoon is something else. I can't remember which one it is. I'm not an expert on cartoons, but on animations. But There's clearly an intertextuality there. Context is very important. So you've got the Lord of the Ring one here, Lord of the Rings. So it's Gollum. I got it, my precious PhD, year 1. Year 3, he's completely, you know, emaciated and destroyed, and we forgot the taste of bread, the sound of trees, the softness of wind. And so it's taken from the film, and so it's lifting something from the film. And it's a kind of, obviously, another type of signal or indexicality. And there's a lot you can do online. People, memes and TikTok videos are very much like this. You can lift things and engage in all sorts of intertextual work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you one example. So this is from the Great British Bake Off. I don't know if you can hear it, by the way. Hold on, let me play. Okay.
Asking myself
Can I check if you can hear that?
in quite a worried way whether I might have made an error.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, it works.
Okay, look. So this is a video, Great British Bake Off, very famous British TV show. Actually, my sister-in-law, she won this national competition recently. Anyway, for this show. And it's baking. Okay, so they bake. Okay. So this is just one line from the film, from the TV show. But this guy, and he's saying he might have made an error.
Just now, internally, asking myself in quite a worried way whether I might have made an error.
Okay, so that's just now. In this video, she says, when your mum sends in the family group chat that your cat is missing and the last place you saw him was lying in your suitcase. Oh, what's the sound? What's the sound? Oh, anyway, so, oh, here we go, sorry.
Just now, internally, asking myself in quite a worried way whether I might have made an error.
So people have taken.
Just now, internally, asking myself in quite a worried way whether I might have made an error.
So can you see what people do there? They take the audio from that clip and they apply it to their own TikTok video. If they've done something terrible, or that they think they may have done something, made a terrible mistake, like leaving the cat in the suitcase or signing a lease on a property that is not finished yet, and they're saying, and they take so they take the voice of the other thing and they put it on their video, and so you have different kinds of intertextuality taking place through practices of digital literacy. And there are various other things that you can look at, like markedness. People don't always say what they mean and mean what they say. Okay, so you can look at how things are marked out, how things are given said in an unexpected way. Something is created, something is marked out as differently in order to give a different meaning to its apparent meaning. So you can look at that sort of thing. So we mark things out through verbally. We mark things out through tone of voice and things like this. Like, really, you know, like we will mark things, we will say things to create the opposite meaning. How you do that online? Well, you use emojis, you use various things, lots of exclamation marks, things like that. We have various ways that we can frame and contextualize what we're saying, and sometimes GIFs and memes help us do that. For example, look at this one here. Well, that sounds just great. So people sometimes say the opposite of what they mean and that sometimes is how we sometimes speak. And so how we do that digitally, well, we use images, we use uppercase, different kinds of exclamation, different kinds of punctuation marks, and forms of emojis as well. So ultimately, it boils down to impression management, and also the message and the message behind the message, the meta message. So you have things like emojis that help you do that, and things like that. I mean, we could talk for a while about this, but you know, like I'm sure you have sort of cynical forms, ways of expressing something other than what you mean, literally, in language. When analyzing digital literacy interactions, you know, there are various things to consider, including that digital interactions are disembodied. We lack the contextualization cues of our face and body. So we need to use other things to make that implicature and to mark things out. We need to manage audience differently. So you can look at how that's done. You don't talk to people in your family as you talk to people with your friends often, your professors, or anyone in the world all at the same time. When you're speaking on Twitter, for example, you could be potentially speaking to millions of people. And you know, people often do not factor that. They do not sort of consider that when they engage in conversation on Twitter. And so emojis end up becoming quite powerful, even more powerful than words in this respect. In an analysis of digital literacy, they are a really important thing. So look at this interaction. Did you get my Christmas present yet? No, just tell me what you want. I mean, that's the naked interaction without any emojis. Now let me show you the one with the emojis. Did you get my Christmas present yet? No. And what's the emoji there? I'm not good with emojis. I'm terrible with them. But that's like the emoji of being frustrated. Just tell me what you want. How long have we been together? And what's the emoji there? It's kind of like, can't see it clearly, but it's like and then 2 years, and then it's a love emoji. 2 years and you still don't know what to get. Just tell me. Just get what you like, think I like. Frustration, frustration, frustration. Keep the receipts though, right? And so that, well, sorry, I can't hear you. You want to turn yourself off? Rosmania, did you say something?
No.
All right. Sorry, I thought you were speaking to me. So do you see the difference between these two interactions? That and that. So that's really important to understand. Okay, next thing, context collapse. Another aspect of digital literacy is that when people talk on social media, it's hard to control who's listening to you. Because you're talking to one person, 2 people, or maybe you have 50 followers or 100 followers, but you could be, millions of people could be viewing that. And so there is something that we are not used to as human beings, quite frankly, is the extent of our communication online. And this relates to the more than human and more than digital aspect of digital discourse. It is multimodal, intertextual, multi-contextual, multi-audience, more than human, but also more than digital. And that takes me to the next part. But I don't think I'm going to have a lot of time to go into it. But so this is just some data from my project. So here you have, let's talk about what I mean by more than digital then. So here we have a Chinese calligrapher, Islamic calligrapher in China, who uses WeChat to post about his work. So here he writes the Imam Shafi's poem and then puts a Chinese rendition, I won't say translation. And so I translated the Arabic and then I translated the Chinese. So the original Arabic poem mentions, and you have Islam and general wellness, or afia in Arabic, which teacher Li renders into something completely different in Chinese. Instead of translating the original Arabic, he presents a version that has the explicit word mention of religion removed. And he uses the Chinese word jiaomen, which roughly translates to teachings, which replaces the word for Islam. And this is quite common in his work. So, because in Chinese social media, if you talk about religion or if it's deemed as proselytization, it can be removed through censoring. Though intangible cultural heritage is allowed, religious content is somewhat more problematic. And so Sini calligraphers like Teacher Lee, they have to tread carefully when they re-contextualize, also recontextualize their work on social media. So as a digital heritage practice, it is allowed in terms of its art form, but in terms of its exegesis and explanation and commentary, they have to tread quite, have to engage in different methods in order to try and allow their work to spread. But of course, teaching the calligraphy is part of the calligraphy practice. And there's another example there. This artwork incorporates a backdrop of Shanshui, Chinese landscape art, alongside an Islamic, message. So this is a form of self-censorship, and this means that heritage literacy is post-digital in the sense that it is more than digital. Because this kind of, or this particular Sini calligraphy form of heritage literacy becomes more than digital, because it's not just, it's pre-digital and also post-digital, in the sense that it is recontextualized in new forms in digital environments. As sensitive words are censored, usually sensitive words are religious words, political words, or words deemed inimical to social harmony. Ultimately, it's the platformization of heritage literacy. And so here you can see the teaching of calligraphy online. So here, the writing art is taught through a post-digital literacy ecology that spans religious knowledge, Chinese art knowledge, and also religious theology and censorship of sensitive words. So you have to look at the whole ecology to understand the heritage literacy. I think I'm running out of time now, so I will move on to, post-digital possibilities is the next point that I want to make. So really, to look at literacy online, we have to understand it as post-digital. Now, people use the word post in many ways in the English language. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are past something in a historical sense, okay? It just means that it is more than digital. And so that's the key point there. And I will end on that because I've been talking for an hour now. So I'm happy to share the slides and also happy to answer any questions for discussion alongside the other speaker. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ibrar, for the insightful presentation. Of course, it broadened our perspectives on what literacy is, yeah, because so far, probably most of us define literacy limited to the ability to read and to write. But actually, as Dr. Ibrar said, that it is actually embedded in our social practice, in our daily life. Even in the morning, when we open our eyes, yeah, we most of the time spend our minutes to do literacy practices, checking our mobile phone, checking messages, replaying messages, and so on. And for your information, Dr. Ibrar, today's participants of our webinar are in-service teacher and also pre-service teacher, and they are wondering how to integrate, how to do this kind of literacy practices in their classrooms, especially in English classrooms. And we have got some questions from the chat box for Dr. Ibrar. So from Ibu Ratna Fitriani, SMP 4 Banjarsari, how to make digital literacy activities more interesting in the classroom, more than games, because nowadays students probably would prefer playing games rather reading or doing literacy practices.
How would you make things more interesting in the classroom?
Yeah, because somehow it's difficult. She said that, Ibu Ratna said that it's difficult to carry out literacy, especially digital literacy, into classrooms in Indonesian context.
Well, everybody's different. Everybody finds different things interesting. I might find something interesting, you might find it boring. So I don't, you cannot make everybody, you cannot do something interesting for everybody. Your job is not to be an entertainer like a clown and to sing and dance to make everybody entertained. So, I mean, people need to understand the purpose of education. It can be fun and there's nothing wrong with this, but it's not, sometimes it won't be. So I don't know really. If you keep trying to do this, you will be trying to please everybody in the classroom, and you will probably end up forgetting about the curriculum because you're trying to entertain everyone. So I don't know. I think if people should be interested in the learning, and if they are not, then I mean, sometimes it's good to go away from digital technology. Sometimes that is the problem. That is the thing that's causing people to be disengaged. So sorry, I don't know. I don't have.
Yeah, probably it will be different in Indonesian curriculum context, how to bring along the literacy, especially digital literacy, into classroom. Probably it will be different from your context and our context.
Yeah, I just shared the my talk on post digital in the chat, so you can have a look at that if you want.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And the next question from Susan, Tangerang Raya University. She's asking about how to promote strategies or campaign through digital media, since many people are now strategies or campaign through digital media, because now many people are active users of internet. She says that internet are creative, interesting, and how to promote or to campaign using digital media in order it can be effective.
For whom?
For Ibu Susan. Bu Susan, would you please clarify your questions? Is it for students or for common general community? Bu Susan, would you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, just so I know what context Bu Susan is referring to.
Yeah, unfortunately, Bu Susan is not with us now, but it seems that, yeah, dealing with, because we have all pre-service teacher here, yeah, it seems that Bu Susan is going to ask about the implication on the pre-service teacher.
So the question is, how can you use technology to campaign?
Yeah. Or use it as promotional strategy.
To promote what?
To promote the four pillars of digital literacy.
Right. So you want to use digital technology to promote digital technology.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good to actually use if you're going to promote it, then you know, you got to ask why are you promoting it and who's benefiting from that. Ultimately, you have to focus on your educational goals, not on the technology itself. If you are focusing too much on the technology, then the technology changes every year, every 2-3 years. You'll just keep changing your focus. So I think that the focus needs to shift from the technology onto the educational goals. Okay. Now, understanding what people do in their social life, in their personal life, in their personal digital literacy, well, that's in their social practices. That's one thing you can do to better understand the level of digital literacy in the community. But to promote technology, I don't think this is an educational goal. I don't think this is a goal for an educator to promote technology. Why would you be promoting Google and Facebook? They are technologies based in the United States, which collect intelligence on people for very sometimes negative objectives. Rather, you should promote creating your own versions of Google and Facebook in your country to serve your country's goals. This is my true, honest opinion.
Yeah.
You know, so I would not, an educator should not be promoting technology.
Not
They should be
promoting
they should be promoting the learning of the subject critically. The first thing they should be is not an advocate of technology. They should be an advocate of the knowledge of the subject, not promoting technologies. In fact, they should be promoting critical interaction with technology.
Thank you for your response. And if we're talking about literacy as social practice, then the implication in teaching is that I once heard about culturally responsive and culturally and linguistically responsive teaching or responsive pedagogy, where teacher believes that each students coming into their classrooms have funds of knowledge based on their social practice experience. Then these kinds of funds of knowledge then become something that the teacher needs to explore, to create teaching within the culture context. And there are some questions dealing with how to integrate, how to make it effective in using the funds of knowledge of students in from their social practice, their literacy as social practice when they're coming into the classroom, and then what can teacher do to maximize the fund of knowledge of their students?
Yes, I think this is very what I've talked about is very closely connected to that concept that you've just mentioned there. And I think that it's very important for students to, for teachers to be aware of funds of knowledge that their students bring, cultural, personal, etc. And yeah, I mean, it depends on what is possible for you as a teacher. It may take you several weeks or months to even understand those funds of knowledge. So perhaps you could engage in a kind of interview at the very beginning of the course where you do like a narrative by, you know, the questions I posed on my slide at the beginning of the talk on when did you first use the computer? When did you first do this? I mean, you could engage in this kind of activity at the very beginning of the course to understand the students' history of technology, their use of technology in their life, and you will find interesting things in there. In that. So funds of knowledge is important. It's a nice theory, but its application for teaching is overstated because it can take you many months to understand somebody's funds of knowledge. By that time, the semester is over, or the course is nearly, you know, halfway complete. So And there are so many students. I mean, if you have 30 students in a class, you're going to have 30 different funds of knowledge to learn. So I think it's good to do it right at the very beginning, do some kind of activity where you can tap into those funds of knowledge to understand your students. Yeah,
Yeah.
and looking at digital literacy in their life is one good way of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective, Dr. Ibrar. Yeah. And now we've moved to the live question session from the on-site participant.
Thank you, Mrs. Rose. My name is Mina. I want to ask permission to ask Professor. In Indonesia, we are not yet use digital literacy in learning because learning is carried out face to face. Yeah. Okay. Are there any learning technique for us teacher as foster digital literacy in student, especially in elementary school? Thank you.
Yeah, the question goes to Dr. Ibrar, yeah, dealing with digital literacy, especially at elementary school, because here in Indonesia, we are not yet integrating it. It's rather difficult. Yeah, so do you have any practical tips for doing that, starting from simple thing, using digital technology to promote literacy in the classroom?
I've never taught elementary school, so I don't know. I don't. Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And Ibu Hidayah also has raised her hand. Yes, please, Bu Hidayah.
Okay, thank you for your time. It's already unmute by the host. Thank you for the time that given to me. I really appreciate it. And your explanation is very insightful for our mind, Mr. Ibrahim, Mr. Ibrahim. Thank you very much for it. By your explanation, digital literacy as a social practice related to the way they get literature for the paper. I talk about the students who get the exam to collect the paper to the teacher, right, Mr. Ibrahim? Related to the way to get literature for the paper for the students, I mean, as we know, yes. Pardon me.
Yeah, go ahead, Bu
Okay.
Hidayah.
Okay. As we know that in the recent time, there are so many kinds of artificial intelligence to help the researcher to find many kinds of resources like ChatGPT and the other to get an outline, for example, abstract references or some previous literature, and so on and so forth. In my question for Mr. Ibrahim, indeed, maybe my question is out of the topic concept, but it will have related to all the matter you have explained to us. The question is, how we know that the students have their own word for their paper according to their literacy understanding, and how we know that their literacy exam is original, made by them, related to artificial intelligence that they have, especially for postgraduate students. That, Mr. Ibar, thank you for time.
Thank you. So first of all, you mentioned that ChatGPT
Yeah.
is used as a tool to find resources. It's not meant for that.
That's one of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and another one is so many.
Yeah, but it's not designed for finding resources.
Yes.
So this is the first problem, is that people don't know critically, they do not critically engage with technology enough. ChatGPT is not for finding resources. It will create fake resources. It's not designed for that. So ChatGPT might be able to help you fix your sentences. That's it. It won't really do much more than that. Even then, it is a form of high-tech plagiarism. So the question that you've asked is not about AI particularly. It is about academic conduct. Okay, it is a question that has always existed. How do you know a student's work is their own work? This has been a problem 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's just that now there are tools to make this kind of academic misconduct more make it more common perhaps, or make it slightly more intense. So I think your question was, how do you know the student wrote the text themselves?
Yes.
Well, how do you know? How do you know anyway? I mean, 2 years ago, how would you know? 3 years ago, how would you know? This is just the same question. It's not really a technological question. It is a question that has been made more of an emergency because of technology, but the question was always there. Right.
Okay.
And the answer
As we
is,
know, in the recent time, just now, the students have more sophisticated tool than the teacher. As we know, it's kind of like that.
So if someone's going to use other texts for their own work, I don't think there's any answer to this apart from that you just have to change the assessment. If you want to change the assessment, because students will use whatever technologies they have access to achieve what they want. So why not just have exams? Why not just have exams where they come into the room and do the exam? And then at some point you will have to change that as well, because then they'll bring in like some sort of chip in their brain to make the words up. I don't know. So when we get to that stage, that's another thing. But or you could change the kind of assessment it is. I mean, you may have to adapt your assessment.
Okay then. Thank you.
Using AI is very common. People have been using Grammarly and spell checker for years. So how people use AI, there needs to be insight on how people use it, and there needs to be education around it, because people will use it for teaching, for learning, but ultimately for assessment, you may have to change your assessment.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your explanation.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Hidayah, and also thank you, Dr. Ibrar. And we're moving to the next question. Some next questions goes to Prof. Ina. Yeah, Prof. Ina, Bu Yuliana Dewi asking about the underlying reason why you develop the website. I mean, what is the importance of developing it related to your university purposes or curriculum?
Okay, Rose, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. I want to apologize for the unfortunate incident. After being notified that my microphone did not work, I began using another external microphone, but the microphone still did not work well. Unfortunately, I did not realize that my second attempt was not working. I thought the external microphone was working well, so I continued my delivery, only to discover the problem after going through the comments after my talk. So now I'm resorting to using my mobile phone. I hope this works. I truly apologize for the technical problem and not realizing that there was one.
Yeah, it's clear for us in the auditorium, but for the online participants, it's not really clear.
Coming
it's
back to
clear
your
now.
question, yeah. Okay, the question about the potential benefits, right? Okay, the reasons of us having the mirror website was namely to gain promotional visibility, international visibility for the university actually, because the mirror website is actually the same content but being written in a few other languages, Arabic, Chinese, Thai. So these regions, they use different platforms, and having content written in a language that is closer to the audience gives us better platform. Okay, I mean better. It gives us more promotional gain. Okay, so it also gives us convenience of updating the information. Before that, we were using third party to upload our information. So by developing our own, we were updating the information ourselves, and we have the ability to display various forms of information, and it gives us the ease of accessibility across space and times. Yeah, so these were great benefits of our time. But there are drawbacks though. Drawbacks would be on the cost.
Mm.
It requires many hours to select particular content for the target audience, and then to translate it, to edit it to the target language, and then we have to have technical sites to maintain the domain, and there's also cost of maintaining domain in the respective regions. Yeah.
Yeah, so mainly on the cost and how many people are involved in developing the website, right? All right. Thank you, Prof. Ina, for the answer. And we're humbly invite the on-site participant for some questions, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Reni Apriani. I want to ask this question to Ms. Ina. Has there been any reflection on teachers from the development mirror program on website image? Thank you.
Do you mean that reflection from the teachers?
Reflection from the developers or from the users? From the developers.
Okay. We have reflections, not really reflections, but we do have reports. We have internal report and external report. The internal report is made by the committee for the university to report about the completion of the project, the progress that has been made, the outstanding issues, the outcome of the project, and the external reports is reported by other people than the committee, like our colleagues from other departments, the general public, and also we get it from the user feedbacks. And I think the most valuable report for us would be from the article by Emman Fashion, who got the data from Alexa database. At that time, Alexa was still working. Yeah, that was I think a decade ago. Yeah. So in terms of reflection, no, we did not include reflection in our report. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So probably later on, you may show us the or give us the link of the website in order we can get the picture of the product being developed. All right, so are there still any on-site participants asking questions? No. All right, so Dr. Ibrar also has dropped a link of his work on China project. Yeah, you may have a check on it, click on it, and you may get some insight from the project. All right. Yeah. So I think because no more questions coming from both on-site and online participants, we are nearing to the end of our webinar. Thank you very much for sharing, Dr. Ibrar and also Prof. Ina. Your expertise has been immensely appreciated and would like to give you the token of appreciation.
Thank you very much. Oh.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Where is it? Dr. Ibrar and then Prof. Ina. Well,
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you, Dr. Ibrar. Well,
Thank
the
you.
audience, thank you for your participation and your active engagement during the webinar. And I encourage each of you to take the knowledge and insight gained today and apply them in your personal and also your professional lives. Online literacy is not just a personal skill, it's a collective responsibility. By staying informed, critical, and responsible in our online interaction, we can contribute to a more informed and inclusive digital world. Thank you very much. Over to you, Bu Heri.
Okay, thank you, Bu Rosma. Okay, as our time together comes to an end, I want to express my gratitude to all our speakers today, and then for the participants and the organizing team who made this event possible. And remember, this is the globalization brings new challenges in the world of technology, education, and other fields. By understanding good online literacy, this will make us wiser to using social media platform and able to communicate through social media. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to see you at future events. Have a great day. Sorry for the mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Ina. Thank you, Dr. Ibrar.
Thank you very much, everybody. Nice to meet you, Professor Ina, and thank you very much, everybody. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Insyaallah.
Salam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.